Yes. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Christy, and thanks, Dami, for inviting me. It's really great to be reading here with Tom. Okay, I can't see anyone. So I'm going to read a little section from this new novel, a novel in progress, which is called "This House We Built." The novel takes place in 1986, and it's in a small town in Ohio. And it's going to be a multiple first-person. Multiple first-person narrators, and so it's 1986, and the son Brian has left. He left home 6 years ago. He's been living in New York, and at the beginning of the novel, his mother gets a letter that he is coming. He wants to come back home, and that he has been diagnosed with AIDS. This section is from Jess's perspective, and Jess is his 14-year-old sister, his younger sister. So she hasn't seen Brian in 6 years. So this is the very beginning when the mother is telling her that he's coming back, and then I'll skip to the very end of her chapter when he arrives. But she doesn't know that he has AIDS. The killer whales are the most misunderstood of the whales. For hundreds of years, people believed they were man-eaters. It's not true. They don't attack humans. Killer whales travel in pods and hunt, play, and rest together. In the wild, the females can live up to 100 years. A mother's offspring stays with her for life. They mourn their dead. My mother fakes like she's interested. Something is wrong. She hardly ever comes downstairs except to do laundry, and she's not much of a TV watcher. "Would you look at that?" she says, eyes on the screen. "How can that be real?" A blue whale parts the ocean like a giant submarine. A close-up shows its enormous, battle-scarred body, all the nicks and healed cuts and scrapes, cement-colored barnacles clinging to it like clusters of dead flowers. "It's bigger than any of the dinosaurs," the man on TV says in his calm voice. Its heart is the size of a VW bug. Facts I already know. When I was little, I pored over the pictures in the sea, part of the collection of books from Life magazine that my mama gave me and my brother one Christmas. We also had Early Man, the mammals, the universe. I saw my first episode of Jacques Cousteau when I was 4 or 5, and after that I was hooked. I want to be a marine biologist. I've never even been to the ocean. I dig my hand in a box of Cheez-Its, and my mother turns her eagle eyes on me. "You're going to ruin your supper." My mother doesn't eat junk food, and she's always on a diet, even though she isn't fat, not like my aunts. I'm not fat either, but I'm plump. That's what one of my Sunday school teachers said about me. Plump is a horrible word, like chunky. My mother is pretty, everyone thinks so. She looks like a movie star in one of those old black and white movies that run on Saturday afternoons when nothing else is on except baseball or kung fu. "Jess, honey, there's something I need to tell you." This is what she sounded like the day she told me about sex. When a man and woman love each other when they're married, she'd started, using the same teacher voice she's using now, and I wanted to die hearing my mother say penis. "What?" I ask. "The orange crackers are the size of postage stamps, and I drop them one at a time in my mouth, splinter and crush them with my teeth." The corners of her lips lift, but they are pressed too tightly to turn into a smile. Her hands stay folded on her lap. She's still wearing her work clothes, iron tan slacks, a navy blouse with scooped neck, and her makeup is soft around the eyes, just a hint of blush. Unlike my grandmother, my mother believes makeup shouldn't call attention to itself, but should only be used to enhance. "It's about your brother." "Brian?" I ask, as if I have more than one. "He's coming home." My mother's eyes, a light brown like watered-down Pepsi, the same color as mine, are wet and glistening. No tears fall. "He'll be here this weekend," she tells me. "To visit?" I ask. "To stay?" A little sigh escapes. Her shoulders sink. "We don't know yet." I have a million questions, and she says we'll talk more during supper after my father gets home. She needs to go check on the meatloaf, she says. She kisses me on the forehead, and the fruity, soapy scent of Charlie, her work perfume, lingers after she's gone. On TV, the warm-voiced man explains that they still don't know where the blue whales go to breed, somewhere deep in the ocean that scientists can't pinpoint. As a marine biologist, I could work for National Geographic or NOVA, go out on a boat in the middle of the ocean, no sign of land for miles, blue, more blue. I dust off my hands, my mouth tastes salty and dry. A sperm whale lifts its gigantic, wrinkled head from the water, and then the screen goes to static. The tape ran out before the show ended. I curl my knees up to my chest, wrap my arms around them. Suddenly I feel very small. I haven't seen my brother since I was 8. Sometimes Brian would let me come in his room and we'd listen to records and play Go Fish, candles dripping wax, thick flowery scent of incense, Brian blowing cigarette smoke out the cracked windows, talking about California, New York, dream places, he said, where people went to be free. After he left, my parents told me he was away at college. I didn't know anyone who'd gone to college, and I believed them for a couple of years until my grandmother told me the truth that he'd gone off to New York, which to most people in Chester made about as much sense as saying you were going to live on Mars. There are other stories about him too, but Mama's is the one I believe. I'm the only girl in Chester with a brother living in New York City. It makes me different in a good way. When I was younger, I told kids about the movie stars and rock singers he hung out with, the parties, the money. I never knew any of this. I made up a life for him. I had to, because he just disappeared, like those missing kids on milk cartons. But nobody kidnapped him. He just went. My parents, except for those early lies about college, don't talk about him. Nobody does, except for my grandmother. She tells me stories about my brother and has never doubted that one day he'd come back home. Whales use echolocation to communicate. They call out and then listen to the echoes to navigate and hunt and find each other. The time an echo takes to come back to tell them how far away an object is. Humans cannot hear or understand them. The calls of humpback whales travel for thousands of miles under the sea. When I was little, I used to think that Brian and I could communicate telepathically like the brother and sister in the movie Witch Mountain. I believed I could send him my thoughts like whale songs and he would hear them. I was just a dumb kid. At night, after I said my prayers, I would close my eyes and listen to the pulsing of the dark, but I never heard any voice, never received any message. A muffler rumbles underneath the music, Gus's truck. I thought we'd all go to meet Brian at the bus stop, but my mother said Brian doesn't want a big to-do. From downstairs, Pearl barks. I count to 3, and then I go. I'm the first one at the door. I stand still, watch the knob turn, like one of those dumb girls in a horror movie, stuck in my tracks. Pearl is barking, wagging her tail. Gus steps in first. Rain trickles down the bill of his Chester Eagles hat and slides down his jacket. He wipes his boots on the welcome mat. He is carrying a lime green duffel bag. "Hey Jess," he says. The door swings wider and a man walks in, his face shadowed by a blue hooded sweatshirt. He's wearing a jean jacket and black jeans and Nikes with a red swoosh. He pulls down the hood. For a second, I don't think it's him. He's skinnier than I remember and looks old and grown up. His hair isn't as blonde as it used to be or as curly. He wears it short on the sides and on top, longer in the back. His teeth are the color of tobacco juice, and his lips are chapped, ragged, stubble on his chin. He reminds me of the pictures I've seen of drug addicts. Maybe my brother is a junkie. "Jess," he says, and his voice is the same. It's deja vu hearing him talk. "You've gotten so old. What are you, like 30 now?" 14, I say. He sets down his suitcase and stands close enough to hug me, but doesn't. Keeps his big bony hands at his side, and I don't make a move toward him either. I don't know him and feel shy. Pearl whines at his feet, pushes her muzzle into his legs, and he crouches down and digs his knobby fingers into her fur. "You got old, Pearl," Brian says. When he stands, I see a little gold hoop in his right ear, delicate, the shape of a fingernail. I can't remember which is the bad one to have pierced, right or left, gay or straight. The air shifts, thins out. It isn't just the 3 of us anymore. My father comes up the stairs and my mother walks out of the kitchen. They stand next to me about 3 feet from Brian. Big Gus tried to scrunch himself into the corner of the doorway, his shoulders slumped, his chin tucked like a bird's, like he doesn't want anyone to see him. "You must be hungry," my mother says in a hoarse, thin voice. "Run into any flooding?" asks my father. 6 years he's been gone, and this is how they greet him, like he just went out to the store for cigarettes. We crowd in close, no one touching. My father looks at the grease rag in his hand like he has no idea how it got there, and balls it up and stuffs it in his hip pocket. "Glad you made it okay," he says. He takes a step forward and clamps his hand on Brian's shoulder. Just as quickly as he touches him, my father reaches his hand back. But it's enough. Him touching Brian like that seems to break something in my mother, like she has just realized who this is, and she lets loose a quiet sigh and goes to him with open arms. Brian rests his head against her neck. My mother stands with her back straight, holding him, but not. Even though her arms are around him, she's not comfortable. She holds back the way boys do when they slow dance, all stiff. No boys have ever asked me to dance, but in gym class last year, our teacher, old Miss Prescott, put us in pairs and made us learn the waltz. Gus says he has to hit the road, and he slaps my brother on the back and says he'll catch him later. I don't want Gus to go. His bigness and softness take away some of the weirdness in the room. The gold beam of headlights drizzle through the windows as he backs out of the driveway. It's quiet again, all of us still standing in the same place until Brian walks around us into the living room. He looks up and down and around. "Nothing's changed," he says. "I've got a pot roast warming in the crock pot," my mother says. Brian sits at the table, and our mother serves him an enormous helping, all of us in the kitchen together for the first time in 6 years. My parents are trying to make conversation and act like this is normal. The light over the stove gives off a yellow glow. We are in a dream, the three of us standing here watching him eat, the rain falling, the air heavy and fragile, like at a funeral. And I guess that's what it is in a way, because I think, just for a split second, that my brother has come back home to die. Thank you.